Welcome to episode 2 of the Best Fleets podcast, brought to you by the team at Carrier's Edge. My name is Chris Henry, and I'm honored to be the host of this awesome new project. The mission of this podcast is to provide a roadmap for willing viewers to become more progressive and also strive for continuous improvement, ultimately helping to build a better workplace for their drivers. Each episode, we will speak to leaders among Best Fleets winners historically and get them to explain what sets them apart and also get the predictions for what they see in the future for the trucking industry. For episode 2, we are pleased and honored to have Rick Williams join us. Rick is now Chief Operating Officer at Daseke, which acquired his company, Central Oregon Truck Company, in 2013. COTC is an 8 times Best Fleets winner and was an overall winner in the 2018 year. Rick is considered both an astute operator, but also a big believer in driver-focused progressive practices. This conversation was a real treat for me, and we hope you enjoy this conversation and will listen and watch future episodes. Enjoy. So Rick, thank you and welcome to the show. So we have Rick Williams with us today, who's the founder of Central Oregon Truck Company and now the COO of Daseke. So he's also a longtime participant. COTC is a longtime participant in the Best Fleets Drive For. And on the wall behind me, you see 2 hats from them. They're one of their regular hats, and on your left, my right, is the one signifying 7 years of being named a Best Fleets winner. That was last year, so there should be an 8 coming up soon. But we'll have that on my wall for the entirety of this run of this podcast. But thanks again, Rick, for joining us, and appreciate you taking the time. The one thing that I wanted to start off with is a little bit of a bio. So I have a summary bio, and that is you started the company, you joined this company in 1992. It was originally fully a brokerage. You brought some trucks to the table, and then you bought the partners out in 99, grew it from there, sold to Daseke in 2013. You were the 4th company to join the Daseke fold. Great track record of leadership, retention. Tell me more.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. Like you said, I've been around trucks my entire life. My father was in trucking. I was around trucks from the earliest memory of my life. Used to enjoy riding around with my dad. He was an end dumper originally. So that was always fun. It was something I looked forward to. And when he'd come home, when I wasn't with him, I looked forward to jumping in the truck with him, sitting on his lap and steering the truck down the driveway. I've been around it. I've worked on them. I've cleaned them. I've probably washed more trucks than I want to admit to. And then I went to work for my dad in 1986. Started driving for him. I was a local driver. I was 20 years old. And so I couldn't cross state lines. When I turned 21, I started driving over the road. And I drove off and on for 3 years. I was young, so a lot of insurance companies would cancel me, and when they'd try to hide me, and then as soon as they'd find out, then they'd put a cancellation on me, and I'd have to come in and work in the warehouse, the shop, and in dispatch. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth and really learned a lot about trucking from my dad. He was a really big. My dad was a really focused on data back then, and it was all math, right? So he tracked everything, and that foundation has stuck with me today, and that's how I view trucking to this day. It's a very mathematical process for me. I left my dad's company in 92 because I wanted to grow, and I don't know that he and his partner wanted to grow that much. Mm-hmm. When you get a little older, you protect what you have and you don't want to risk. And when
it's natural, right?
Yeah, when you're 23 years old, you're like, no, I got nothing to lose. Let's throw the dice. Mm-hmm. So I left and joined a guy who owned a brokerage called Central Oregon Truck Brokerage. But I had bought a few trucks under my dad's umbrella and took those trucks with me, and that's why we needed another name. So we came up with Central Oregon Truck Company. And I don't know if that name is really fitting of a transportation company, but that's what it was. So anyway, it was really a group of friends that built Central Oregon Truck in the early years. We're really all the way through the time. But in 1999, I bought the original guy that had Central Oregon Truck Brokerage out. And then a few of us stayed, and those that didn't have equity in the company, I gave them equity. And I've always given equity to folks in the leadership roles. And sometimes that's been a mistake, and sometimes it's just worked out great. So, it is what it is. But we built the company, and we really, after 99 is when we really started to drive the business. And then I had a CFO join me in 2008. And he was a real driver to the business, because he did financially what I wanted, and he viewed it as, look, I'm going to wash the windows so you can clearly see the business in a moment's notice. And all the triggers, you're the operating guy, the triggers to pull, I'm going to give you the data. And that's when we really started rolling with data. And one old story was I thought we had one fleet that I thought made money. And he came to me, and he had broke the fleets down kind of by truck P&L, and said, here's your trucks in this fleet. And we were losing about $100,000 a month. And within the next week, that fleet was down to about 6 trucks. I mean, we just changed it like that. Probably the other real key in our company was my brother-in-law and I both worked for my dad. And he was the maintenance side, and he really loved maintenance and digging into how to be very mechanically efficient. He's a great maintenance leader today, still with me today. In fact, he kind of tries to help a lot of the other opcos within Daseke. So between maintenance and really knowing our data and our numbers, we were able to do something that is very hard to do for a small fleet. We were running in the 80 ORs, mid 80s. I'd say 84 to 88 as a 175 truck company.
That's amazing.
So it was great. So we sold the Daseke in 2013, joined that platform, and we've been moving forward ever since.
No, and the one thing that I've had conversations with other Daseke executives, leaders of some of the different operating codes, and one of the unique things that you don't see in these kind of roll-up situations or consolidation situations is the collaboration. A lot of times they're left in their own kind of silos, whereas you guys, especially in the most recent years, have really tried to break those silos down and collaborate amongst each other. So you have departmental collaboration groups, and you have regional collaboration groups. And can you just briefly speak to the advantages of that?
Sure. In trucking, everybody keeps their cards right here, right? Well, that's the unique characteristic about Daseke is you've got all these operating companies that might do things differently, but at the end of the day, we're all still hauling freight, and we'll show each other our cards and go, here's how we're doing this, or here's how we're doing that. And every idea doesn't work in every company, but they might have to modify it slightly to get it to work. A part of it might work. And I think that the more and more that Daseke continues to collaborate, you're going to live in the state of best practices. And that's what you have to get to, is not trying to chase best practice, but live in the state of best practices. And, Daseke's getting their arms around that, and it's working well. So, again, at Daseke, there were some bumps along the way. There's always is when you're building a hybrid company that's never been built before. But today, great leadership team at the corporate level, trucking experience now at the corporate level.
Mm-hmm.
So the team, I really appreciate my teammates there. They're all great people. They want to do what's right for the company, and we've gelled really good. We're developing friendships like a team should.
Nice.
So we can say anything. We all have thick skin. It's a really good team. And then if you drop down, the OpCo leaders and the CEOs out in the field, look, we've got some great operators. We've got a lot of human capital that's very talented, whether it's not just the CEO, but it might be CFOs, controllers, into the shop, maintenance arena, and everybody safety, got a lot of really good safety leaders out there. So I think that, we definitely have an upper hand and an advantage when we work together.
That's great. No, it's great to hear, and nice to see it's all coming together.
It is. It is.
So, Rick, for our viewers, what's the motivation for COTC to stay involved in the Best Fleets program year after year after year? What does it do internally for your business?
I think this keeps an edge on us and it reminds us that we need to serve our driving team, and we need to have a good culture and make sure that we're not missing the boat somewhere along the way, by looking at what other fleets are doing and really analyzing. It's really about the whole package. And that's another great thing about Best Fleets. They look at the whole package of a company, not just pay or not just miles, or, they're looking at every single thing that you could possibly think of. And when they're doing that, you kind of, that's the value factor, right, that a driver gets. So we kind of look, even in very specific line items, if we're falling behind in something and we've scored really low, we got to ask ourselves, is that chamber empty? And now we don't have a fully loaded gun here to do the right thing for all our drivers. So I think that's important to maintain the edge.
Mm-hmm. And that leads into the question about total working environment. So there's one of the most important things, most important questions in the Best Fleets questionnaire is, what are you doing to build or maintain your total working environment? And that can be a big catch-all, but what I boil that down into is, what do you do to keep drivers? Why are drivers staying? And it's always much beyond just, the compensation. That's just a table stake. Drivers can go, they're one of the most mobile workforces in the world. They can go somewhere else and get a better gig for our better paying position, apples to apples. But it's really the culture and the things that they get, the rewards and the recognition that many people don't put enough credence to. So are there anything unique? What unique things are you guys doing that you think are unique that help to ensure that total working environment for drivers?
Well, there's no silver bullet. You're right. So it is about culture. I would say it is the total package is what we really try to focus on, a total package for the driving team. And because a lot of our staff were former drivers, I was a former driver, we kind of know what's important to drivers and what's not that important to drivers. So, simple things, some of the most simple things keep drivers happy, but you got to keep a driver comfortable. He's got to kind of know, he's got to be comfortable in what he's going to make. And one of the things that we do that I think is unique is our pay and how we pay. Trucking has forever been big check, little check, big check, little check. And the driver complains on the little check weeks because he knows he worked hard. But the fact of the matter is he may not have got that load in delivered within the cutoff period for payday, right? Well, that's not his fault in all reality. So So one of the unique things that we did is we started saying, look, we've got the technology to actually see what miles the driver drove in a week's period of time. And so we started paying them on miles driven, and it's no longer based on load delivered. We know they're going to deliver the load. So I think that's a really unique, and it's flattened our payout, and we back it with a minimum. So we have a minimum salary, and then it's tiered up the more production they get. And they can see that, hey, if I work just a little more today, or I put in a little more effort, manage my time a little bit better, I'm going to jump 2 tiers and I'm going to make $1,500 this week. And I do think you have to have a robust pay package. I think a lot of trucking companies are behind on pay right now. And I think that Central Oregon has a very lucrative pay package for drivers who want to manage their time and work.
And you do have a unique model, and you introduced that a couple of years ago, but it remains unique. The thing that I see in the driver surveys that I didn't get to see before because I wasn't involved in Best Fleets, but I had a hypothesis it was a lot about what you alluded to was consistency. So when we look at the driver surveys now, and this includes your driver surveys for COTC, was the ability to obtain credit. So you don't think of it, but if you're underwriting a loan to someone and you see variations in income, you're going to rate them lower. And a ton of drivers this year mentioned that, especially those who are, have some form of salary-based pay or guaranteed, is they now can obtain credit, and essentially they don't have to fund gaps in their income from week to week, those roller coasters, and then really fund the life they should be living anyways. So I think that's something that fleets need to think about. Is it's maybe less about the total compensation, more about the consistency of earnings, because it affords them access to the things we're all used to, those that are getting paid consistently. So very good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, I think there's a lot of companies that pay based on performance factors, whether it's fuel mileage, and we used to do that. Our drivers would wait for 15 days after the end of the month to get their bonus, and they were pretty hefty. They were almost like getting a 5th paycheck every month. But what we decided was we wanted a driver to have their pay now, and we wanted it to be guaranteed. Well, the problem with that is you say, well, what if they don't perform? And we had to shift our mentality in how we manage to, well, this is our expectation. We're going to pay really well, but this is our expectation, and they need to tick off these expectations, whether it's fuel, idle time, production, safety. They just need to perform. And if they can't perform, then, probably it's better that we don't have them on the team.
Right.
Of course, we with that comes a lot of, hey, I've got to train them and teach them how to perform. So you have to have those items in place to get to that kind of a package. Otherwise, you could have a disaster on your hands.
Yeah, you're just not handing the keys to them, and that gets displayed in your reportables. Like especially for a flatbed operation, you guys are super low in terms of your DOT reportables. So some kudos to your safety department. So definitely leading edge from a technology point of view, but also reading through your question in terms of remedial training. So you don't give up on drivers. So if they have 1 or 2 issues, you don't just walk them out the door. You focus on training. So
absolutely. I mean, everyone makes mistakes. And everyone, when a mistake's made, you just got to make sure that it's really about the attitude of the mistake, right? If the driver doesn't care, and you're not going to retrain that driver, you're not going to reshape his thought process that causes that mistake to be made. So from my perspective, it's really, you can retrain, but you can't retrain the same thing or the same person It's got to be coming from their heart, and they've got to have the attitude that they want to learn. So that's kind of where we draw the line of, we look at the attitude first, we look at the infraction, right? Then we look at the attitude. And if the attitude's good, then we're absolutely going to retrain them every time.
Nice. Well, turn it over to 2020, the year of the pandemic and the essential worker. One of the themes that most carriers mentioned was they ramped up their communication efforts. So they, in terms of quantity, and a lot of companies focus on quality. What were some of the things that you guys did to keep drivers in the know and keep them comfortable and keep them connected with the COTC team?
That's a great question. First of all, I think personal one-on-one contact is the best. And we have a lot of that. While we rely on technology, we also continue to have that personal one-on-one connection with our driving team. They talk to almost every CSR at some point in time in a year. They might have one or two that they talk to more than the others, but they talk to everybody. We have really true open door policies. Our drivers can walk into our offices any time of the day. There's no allowing them in. It's free come and go. Everyone's office doors open. And then really that's that culture that you create of, we're a team. We all work for each other. We all have a heart of a servant for one another. And when things, I saw it in 2008. 2008, I think, is a better example than COVID almost, because people were afraid they were going to lose jobs, and the water spigot turned off. And we had a record year in 2008. And I just asked my guys, I said, listen, right now, the main thing is we're going to keep food on the table, roof over heads, clothes on backs, and there's probably not going to be much meat left on the bone after that. But that's what we're going to do. Nobody's taking a pay cut. We never stopped contributing to 401k programs, nothing. And we said, just be patient with us, because this is very difficult times and we have to find loads. So we need you to not call us every 5 minutes if you don't have a load. We need to spend that time searching for loads. So COVID was the same thing, right? When COVID happened, people were unsure, they were nervous, they were scared. We didn't know a lot about the virus early on, and how contagious was it? How safe were they with their interactions? What if I get sick on the road? So we just tried to get ahead of that. We looked at what was going to be the problems, and what is our process going to be? If a driver gets sick in a truck, how are we going to deal with that right now today? And at what point somebody has to service that driver, right? For sure. So we got ahead of it with our vendors. We talked to our vendors, our fuel providers, and said, hey, if our driver gets sick, can we be in your parking lot? And how can you help us manage that? Can we get food delivered to him, water delivered to him, whatever his needs or her needs were? And by the way, April reminds me that girls are drivers too. So when I say guys, I mean guys and girls. But I'd love to see more women in the flatbed workspace. We've had quite a few, and they're really, really rock stars. They perform. So I'd love to see more women who might be out there driving vans. Don't rule out flatbed. I'll just throw out that pitch.
So do you think the resistance is, the extra requirements with, tarping and load securement? Is that the number one?
Yeah, I think that's a fear for some of them. One of our driver coaches now, who works on the internal staff, was a former driver for us. And I don't even think she's 5 feet tall. And she was unbelievable. It's not as hard as you would think. You just have to do it the right way.
Nice. So one of the other observations I have from your submissions I've looked at over multiple years was, it seems to be you're pretty tech forward. So you seem to be on the leading edge of technology, especially driver apps and technology such as that. Can you speak to that? And number two, maybe speak to that advantage with being, with the Daseke group, being able to stay away from the bleeding edge as opposed to the leading edge. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I've always loved technology. I believe technology is data and information, and the more information we have, the better we're going to be. The more accurate the information, the more granular, the more we can evaluate, predict outcomes, create predictive analytics, and really know where our business is going instead of waiting till it gets there to say, hey, we got to do a left turn. Mm-hmm. And by the way, back to your communication piece, these podcasts, we've been doing these for a while now for our driving team, and they love them because they can listen to them on their own time frame when they want. It's really personal. We bring different people into the conversation, and we talk about COT, challenges, issues, concerns, where we're going, what we're doing. So that's really good. But when I think about technology, one of the main drivers for technology for me as well is it's my responsibility to keep our internal staff lean for our driving team staff. And the only way we can do that is through really good technology and really good process and workflow. So that's what technology brings to us. And then, of course, on the safety side, it's just a must. Today's litigious environment is crazy, and we want to know what's going on in that truck, how that driver is driving all the time. And what it really does is it gives you a better picture of the driver, who that driver is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I remember we could look at data in the 80s, right? And my dad taught me how to say, hey, this is, I can tell you how this driver drives based on his fuel mileage, based on his tire wear, blah, 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 blah. And he gave me 4 or 5 points, and he was right generally. But now today I can see that, but I can see so much more. And I can stop an accident from happening, or I can retrain a guy that maybe doing what he was taught and thinks is the right thing. Keep in mind our demographics, right? Our demographics on the driver, they've been driving a while. Yep. So you have to retrain them. Back when I was driving, you didn't have anything like progressive shifting and that improved fuel mileage, and they didn't have parameters on a truck. So, you could overtack a truck, you could do all kinds of crazy things. But with technology, you're able to get a holistic view of the driver's performance and really evaluate how you need to go about retraining him or shaping him to fit into your organization.
Yeah, and that holistic view, it appears that that's extended from, driver and back office to the shipper now. So you guys were one of the first to introduce a load scoring tool for drivers, and it appears now you've expanded that so that shippers are being held accountable beyond that rate per mile. If they're not performing in terms of providing facilities for drivers and comforts and treating drivers with respect, you're going to know about this a lot quicker than maybe you would have 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important. The interface between the shipper or consignee it can cause you turnover. Whether it's just they take too long to get them in and out, or whether they're just rude, or whether they don't have any kind of services, or they don't let you park there. And we're going to try to take this to another level as well, to where, we really want to understand what is the shipper doing to be a best-in-class shipper, to be a shipper of choice. And I think as shippers start to evaluate their business, and capacity, is probably changing. I'm going to say capacity will change continually because of the driver market. And, with that, you've got this finite number of humans who can do this work. So as a trucking company, we want to be able to get them and get the best of the best. And the shipper is going to want to get the best of the best of the companies that are achieving those results. So they have to start looking at being a good partner, being a good steward of our company towards our drivers. And I think that opens the door when we're tracking the issues, that opens the door to those conversations. And it also, frankly, we might have to charge somebody more because of their actions. And if we're going to charge them more, we might have to pay a driver a kicker to go into that place because they're not taken care of.
Yeah. So if they're not listening to the data, then they're going to pay.
That's right. And so we want to get ahead of that and have the data and have the proof when we talk to the shipper and just say, look, you're a really difficult shipper for our drivers. And frankly, it costs me a lot to recruit and retain a driver. And I don't know if you cost me 2 or 3 drivers a year, I don't know if you're worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, we did a study a couple of years ago within the TCA profitability program. We did an exercise, all soft and hard costs, and the average cost, drive-in, flatbed, dedicated, all those different modes was average of $11,900. So one or two, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and in the interim, it costs the drivers a lot of money because emotional investment into bad situations, those kind of things. So, yeah, you're right on point on that. I noticed this one thing that you guys introduced was wellness / appreciation calls. So, can you tell our viewers a little bit more about those?
So keep in mind, Luke is really highly involved in the whole best fleets process. Mm-hmm. And typically he gathers a team together. April kind of quarterbacks the gathering of the information. So some of the stuff that is new, I work for Daseke now.
Yep.
And I'm not totally familiar with, but I do know that we check on drivers if they're not moving, if they're not doing something, we're gonna check on them. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know exactly what the program is. You might even know more than I do on it, because I try to stay out. Look, Central Oregon Truck was my baby, but I've passed that on to Luke. So I try to stay out. I work more from home now rather than go in every day because he needs to build his culture and he needs to be the leader, and that's just part of that handoff and transition.
No, that's good strategy.
So I'm sorry I can't help more.
Yeah, no. If you're curious, 30 drivers are picked randomly each week, and calls are made out to them. Just check in how they're doing from a select group of people. If wellness calls are another title for them, that's what they do. But why I brought that up is we had another executive mention that during COVID, it wasn't necessarily the fact that they wanted to get more messages out. It was the quality. He said, he reiterated the fact that drivers, for the most part, there's a good chunk of them are introverts. They'd rather be on the road by themselves, but that doesn't prevent them from becoming lonely. And he said what COVID did was it amplified that loneliness factor. And I thought that was a really good targeted way that you guys addressed that. So kudos to Luke and the rest of the COTC team. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like what they did.
Yeah.
Wish they would tell me I could share it with everybody.
Nice. The one thing that caught my attention a couple of years ago about Central Oregon was something that was mentioned in a Best Fleets presentation at one of the TCA conventions. I think it might have been in Nashville, and that was the Concierge Program. And I know that other carriers copied that because my involvement in the TCA profitability program, I heard a number of carriers say, we copied what Central Oregon was doing on that. And the concept is so simple. They bring their truck in off the road. You have someone meet them at their truck. They clean their truck for them, maybe have a meal prepared for them, but they make them feel like they matter. And a simple thing like cleaning a vehicle, like everyone loves a clean vehicle. It doesn't care who you are. And I just want to kind of look at that now. How is that done? Have you guys modified that? Do you still have that program?
Oh, absolutely. That was we did that quite a while ago. And where that came from is, I was raised pretty modestly, and the first time I ever went to a hotel where they had a concierge or a valet, I was, the guy went to grab my bags, and I was like, "What are you doing? You know, you
Get
trying
out
to
of
take
here.
my stuff?" And he's like, "No, I'll take it up to your room." I can carry it. No, no, that's what we do.
Mhm.
And so as I just thought about, you know, how do we give a little something extra? A guy comes off the road, he's tired, he's probably just loaded, unloaded, um, or he's coming in from putting down some long miles. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we did some things for him? Phil is deaf. He pulls up to the building, it's actually in the lane. My brother-in-law, who is our maintenance director, he wanted to do more of an inspection lane. And I said, listen, I don't like that idea, because then drivers are going to want to skip the yard. And we used to have drivers skip the yard, and that was a problem.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things we were trying to solve for, is how to get them not to skip the yard. Why did they want to skip the yard? And then I thought, man, if he puts in an inspection lane, this is going to be everyone's going to skip the yard. So I said, look, if we want to do something nice, let's create this concierge role, and he can inspect the truck while the driver's multitasking doing something else. He can be going in, we have an on-site deli and restaurant. He can go in and eat there and take a shower, and we'll take the onus of doing this and not take his time. And along the way, we're going to fill his windshield wiper fluid. We're going to fill his depth, which is part of the ROI, right? We're not buying it on the road, and we're buying it in bulk. And let's inspect his truck. If he wants coffee, we'll get him coffee. We'll clean garbage out of his truck. We don't really clean the truck there. We have a full-time detailing bay that we detail trucks in after every driver gets out, every time. Awesome. And it's professionally done. So we did that by having a professional come do it, and we watched what equipment he had, and then we went and bought all the equipment and hired somebody and we do a lot of trucks every week. But that program works really well. The concierge has radios. He can radio into the deli and say, hey, this guy wants a burger, or this guy wants a shower. We don't always do it perfectly. My goal is, the guy says, I want a shower, and someone goes and puts towels in the room, in the bathroom, and has the door open for him when he comes. So, we're always trying to improve it, but the driver will park the truck. And I remember one of my longtime drivers, he's been with me probably close to 20 years now. He said, nobody's parking my truck for me. I'm not letting anybody get in the truck. I said, okay, listen, Carl, you don't have to do that. It's just an option. His wife picks him up at his truck door at the concierge, and he leaves. Nice. He does not park his truck ever.
Nice.
So
he gets it now, right?
Oh yeah, he gets it. They have paperwork. They'll take paperwork. They'll give him more stock of paperwork. They're really there to serve any driver need.
That's awesome. No, I love that idea and how you've expanded on it. So prediction. So what does 2021 look like from the flatbed market? What's it ramping up like?
It looks pretty good. This is where I need to be careful, because we are publicly traded.
Right. Yeah.
I can see out probably 6 to 8 months. It looks good. There's always changing environments that could change that, but right now I'm happy with the way it looks. I think that driver issues are going to maintain. We're going to continue to have a tough market in recruiting, and so rates are going to move, and then driver wages move, and then driver wages move again, then you got to move rates. So probably the two biggest factors are fuel costs and driver wages. Of what's that going to do, and how can we stay ahead of that? So
yeah, if they don't get that boat unstuck from the Suez Canal, it could be a pretty tough year for oil.
yeah, it could. But,
one of the things too on that note is the drug and alcohol clearinghouse. When you mention capacity, so you have a macro view of all these different operating entities. Are you seeing it have a pretty big effect on capacity?
no, not really, because our opcos really did a good job of testing and random testing, and testing for reasonable suspicion testing. I so far I haven't felt a huge impact. I know Central Oregon Truck hasn't felt much of an impact, and I think that goes back to culture too. People know that our company just has zero tolerance for any kind of inhibited driving,
Yep.
whether texting and driving, or whether it's being with alcohol or drugs of any type. It just doesn't work for us, and they know it. And a long time ago, there used to be this, you could give them a second chance program, and I did it probably 8 times, and 8 times they failed again at some point in time within a year. So for me, it was just, look, I can't take that chance with the motoring public and their lives. So I stopped offering a second chance agreement, and that kind of turned the curve for who came to us.
Right.
Because there was no second chance.
Yeah, they knew already coming in.
Yeah. And it was done wherever they were at. It was game over.
Two more questions for you. I really, again, thank you for your time. In terms of your efforts to attract a wider audience of drivers, or a wider group of drivers, you mentioned women. Are there any things that you're doing on the recruiting side specifically to attract more women, more ethnic minorities, anything along that line?
Each OPCO recruits for themselves. So there's a variety of strategies out there. Look, we want good people who want to be professional drivers. We don't care what they look like. We just want good people. And I think that's important for the industry to know is we have every ethnicity driving for us today, period. And we welcome more of all.
Yep.
And gender. I think that for the females in the industry, I believe that there is a higher paying job in the flatbed side of the industry that they could go after, and I would tell them to do it. If they're going to be away from home, why not make the most you can?
Yeah, good point. One final question. So if I was starting out 18, 19 years old again, and I had seen the West Coast, I probably would have got out there and stayed. So your maybe top 1 or 2 favorite locations in Oregon, outdoor locations.
Well, I live in Central Oregon, and Central Oregon's pretty hard to beat. You have a lot of outdoor activity. You can do virtually any outdoor activity in Central Oregon. It's not a metropolitan area, but we have plenty of metropolitan activities. We have some great food, great activities. So I love Central Oregon. I'm trying to think where else in Oregon I really like. That everything on the valley side I don't really like, what we call the valley, which is everything west of the Cascade Mountain Range.
Yep.
Because it's just dreary and it rains a lot, and I don't care for that. I used to live over in the valley in Southwest Washington, and I swear I'd never go back. But so maybe Medford, the Medford area is kind of nice. That Southern Oregon area. It's kind of nice. It gets good weather and lots of outdoor activity.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I really, again, appreciate you taking the time, and maybe your final word on those that are thinking about getting involved with Best Fleets. Any final parting thoughts for those viewers who are contemplating doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm honored. I've always been honored to be part of Best Fleets and humbled as well. There's some really great carriers that are involved in Best Fleets. So to be in the top 20 group is a humbling experience, because there is a lot of great carriers. So I would just tell people that, look, the driver situation is going to continue to be dynamic and continue to change. And the Best Fleets is the best way to keep up on emerging trends, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other venue that I know of that will keep you as ingrained as deeply as Best Fleets does about emerging driver treatment and what people are doing that is creative, but that also you can scale and you can also afford. So I would encourage everyone to be in Best Fleets.
Great testimonial from a great leader. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Some awesome words of wisdom from Rick Williams. Our hope is that you wrote down a couple actionable takeaways during this episode. Even in this short conversation, you can see why COTC has always had an amazing retention record. For COTC, every strategic decision that they look at starts and ends with, how is this going to affect the drivers? If it has the potential to have a negative effect or impact on drivers, it doesn't happen. The future is bright for COTC and the rest of the Daseke companies. Before wrapping up, if you have not already done so, if you're watching via YouTube, please hit the subscribe button for future episodes. And if you're listening via Apple, Google, or SoundCloud, we would appreciate you also subscribing there so you'll be served future episodes hot off the plate. Until next time, stay safe and keep improving.